Well, hi, I'm Shipra, and I work at iRobot, and I'm super excited to be here. I'm a senior UX designer at iRobot, and what that means is I'm sure you've seen one of these out there somewhere. These just videos kind of all over the news about the Roomba. And what I get to do is I actually get to design the behaviors and experiences for our robots. I'm going to be looking back and forth because I have two screens open here, but um, I work on designing everything from how the robot moves and understands your space to like how users, including pets in your home, are able to interact with the robot both at a physical hardware level as well as from like the digital app. So that's sort of what I do. And I wanted to share a little bit of stuff I geek out about because there's way too many things and way less time. But I'm super into pottery, painting, art, photography, I love puzzles. I have done a lot of puzzles with my team, several thousand pieces at a time, everything from single color puzzles, grading puzzles, whatever you can think of. So if you want to talk about puzzles, hit me up. Space is something I'm passionate about. My latest obsession is Away on Netflix. You should watch it if you haven't yet. But it's about the first human mission to Mars. So getting to what I'm actually going to be talking about today is user experience and advocating for the user. So kind of what do I do and what does that mean? And this isn't necessarily in the context of iRobot, but like what does it mean to advocate for the user? So I have two quick examples that I'm hoping to get through of how you can find what the user needs are and how to design for it. So quickly going over how I came to be passionate about this. I actually did my undergrad in computer science. So growing up, I kind of loved problem solving and I really wanted to be a doctor, but that didn't work out because I did not want to dissect things. So I was like, what do I do? So I got into computer science, problem solving. And during my first job is when I was introduced to the concept of UX. I worked at a travel tech company and we used to have these hackathons every year. And one of those hackathons, I had been in a lot of these UX sessions and I decided to uncover what the user needs were. And the types of questions I would sort of ask myself are like, why are we coding what we're coding? Why did the designer design the things the way they did? What is the benefit of doing this? What are the user needs? So a quick kind of UX study. But since I was working on a travel app, a lot of what I noticed was users would want to share their travel itinerary with people on the go. So imagine that you're going to the airport, you have your brother picking you up from the airport, and what you would do is kind of send your flight information, send a screenshot, something, and then the person at the other end would be constantly Googling or trying to figure out where you are so that they make sure they get there on time. So what our app did was actually load your travel itinerary information, much like Google Trips, which is Google Travel, whatever it's called, I think, which is a more recent product. But kind of why this was a problem, like I said, travelers usually wanted to share information on the go, and they would have to switch their context between these two things, like taking a screenshot, finding this personal information. All this logistical information was being communicated in not the most efficient way. So this is around the time when iMessage came out. For people familiar with iPhones, it's an extension in your um, messaging app where you can send all sorts of information. So kind of the examples I found off of Apple were like stickers, GIFs, games that you can play on there. So what I ended up designing with two of my coworkers in this hackathon was this iMessage extension, which would basically embed your travel information in your chat. So you would just tap on the information and you could send it to someone. So quickly going over the solution, the travel app will load your personal itinerary. We embed that information. All you have to do is tap once, like I said. So here's a look at our app on the left. So kind of what I've been talking about is like we had everything from logistical information of where your flight was moving, if it's on time, it's not on time, if you had like other things like um, rental cars or anything, like a hotel booking, it would automatically show up. And then on the right is how we would kind of lay that information out in your texting app. And you would just kind of swipe through whatever item you wanted to share. And as you can see, there's like flights that were delayed, flights that were canceled. So if you were to share this with someone, they would actually get the latest information. And even when they had the card with them, it would be live. So let's say on the left, you kind of sent this information to someone, it would live update in that chat, even though you sent it a while ago. So why did I say all this and why am I talking through a solution? Well, all of this is to say is thinking about the context of how users are using your product is really key because it highlights user needs and potential pain points. Because otherwise, we could just be designing new features because we're competing with other products. But if we don't look at the context of how our product is being used, which in this case was like in the Uber, as you're trying to get to the airport to let the other person know, or you're like sitting on the flight and you want to let someone know what's happening. Um, so how do you have that in context way of sharing information easily? And to highlight again, the reason I'm passionate about advocating for the user is because user research helps understand articulated and unarticulated user needs. Like this might not be an issue when people talk about this travel app because it's not directly related to them using that app. But if you were to observe them traveling, you would realize that they're doing all sorts of these things which are unarticulated, but are actually actual pain points that aren't even realized. And advocating for the user or talking about the user helps us focus and create solutions that solve real user problems and not just add a new feature, which is what I talked about. Cool. So, oh, the screen stopped moving. Okay. Okay. So quickly, sorry about that. So I wanted to share a few examples of how other companies that I think personally are leading in terms of how they make great designs, which are not just like about adding a feature or trying to make something exciting, just like a splash, but a lot of cars these days have heads-up displays. I don't know how many people are aware of that, but basically instead of having the wheel or whatever it's called, I forget what it's called, inside your car and having all these different displays to tell you information like navigation, you have like a phone up. Heads-up displays actually overlay your information on right in front of your eyes. And the unarticulated or articulated user need here was like people would go back and forth checking their speed as they're driving, look at maps, look at all these other screens, kind of see where they have to go, try to find what the speed limit is. And what a heads up display kind of helps you do is just overlay that information in the line of sight of the user. So you're actually solving for an issue that you might not even think is an issue because, of course, there's a speedometer in the car and you don't have to think about speed, but it's not there where a person is looking at. So by doing this quick, simple change, you're actually able to help the user. I'm gonna move a little bit quickly, but another example I like is Dyson needs here where like things like you're not able to can't clean the inside of your fan. The flow of air isn't really great when it comes to fans with blades. Um, for obvious reasons, fans with blades are not safe. So Dyson made these fans without blades, and I think it's like a great piece of art and design. And this one I think is interesting just to talk about. Whenever, like, I don't know if people have noticed, I'm sure you have, when you do dishes and you kind of open the faucet, sometimes it splashes all over you. So this faucet was actually designed so that there's like a steady, slow stream coming in from the bottom, and you're able to just like kind of face your dish towards the sink, and it cleans out the dishes instead of like splashing the water on you. And there's like a few more designs I have, but I'm going to skip that because I want to talk through the last example I have, which is um, another design I worked on, which kind of talks about why advocating for the user is important. I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can because I know I'm short on time. But I did this design challenge a while ago, which is interesting given COVID happening because a lot of people have been adopting animals, but usually animal adoption is not the most easiest thing. So I did this design challenge trying to understand what the issues were with animals not being adopted in animal shelters because they're always overflooded with animals. So I tried to look at current solutions, and I don't know if anyone has adopted an animal, but it's usually like dating or buying a car, those two extremes where you kind of put specs in to kind of what you want and they give you results, or you kind of see pictures and names and you pick an animal, which is an interesting way to adopt because um, kind of the insights that I just talked about. But that's an interesting way to adopt because those aren't the problems that I found when I was researching this. So I went and researched in a bunch of shelters, and I talked to a bunch of people that had actually adopted animals or were looking to adopt animals. And what I found was that personality match is kind of the biggest issue in this process, which is similar to dating, because I actually dug into dating at the same time to understand if there were any parallels. And a lot of it is education from the shelter and people to try to understand what would be a good match for not only their lifestyle, but their personality. So I looked at a bunch of like analogous domains and how other types of apps are looking at this, not just from like a picture based design or spec based design. And what I ended up making was actually it's far out, but I made a Myers Briggs personality test version of a website where you take one test at the end of the person who's adopting, but one at the end of the shelter. And then based on that, you kind of match an animal to the person kind of adopting. And this is not to say that this is the best solution, but my point again here being focusing on the user. So I have these few screens real quick of what happens, and these are low fidelity prototypes, but like people at the center, adoption shelter would kind of take this test. You would take this test, and then you'd be matched to a potential pet. So as I said, this might not be the best solution, but the problem, but the goal of this design challenge was to dig deeper into personality, intellect, and then create a service that digs at user pain points and not just surface level problem, which is I want to adopt an animal. So yeah, to end things, kind of the thing I'm passionate about here is understanding user intent and mental models and advocating for the user, and that will inevitably lead you to like design and make something that's really good, user friendly, and is going to last over time. So thank you. And my LinkedIn on here, and shameless plug for iRobot Design if you want to check us out.